Hey, good morning, everybody. John here, and hard to believe that we're actually heading into week 7. So we are in the home stretch. We've got the final project for the iTrolly case due this week, and then I believe next week we've got the final version of the Terry Schiavo project that you guys turned in this week due. So so I don't have a lot this week. I appreciate, of course, all the engagement. I think collectively on the last assignment I graded, I think everyone did a great job. And I'll, at the very end, just give you some reminders in terms of things to think about as you turn in the final draft of the iTrolly assignment, as you combine the legal component with the with the ethical component. So, anyways, with respect to this week, a couple things I just want us to think about. First of all, as we put together the final version of the iTrolly case assignment, I want to emphasize the distinction here between ethical issues and legal issues. So obviously, there's the legal component that was subject of an earlier assignment in the course, and then just within the last week or two, we had the ethical component, and then now we're combining the two. So, I just want to emphasize, okay, what are the differences between the ethical issues, the legal issues, and the way I think we should think about this, or what I would propose is a way that we think about it is, framing the issues around the elements that are associated with those issues. So, for example, what is negligence? What is medical malpractice? And everyone has successfully, I believe, identified the 4 elements of a negligence case, of a malpractice case. Many have gone along with how the book has described them, which are the 4 Ds, which is fine. I mean, you can call the 4 elements whatever you want, as long as you identify the 4 elements. And so that's a legal component, right? That's not an ethical issue. And one thing that I wrote to a couple of you this past week is that someone can be totally ethical, acting just in just perfect ethics, and still be liable legally for negligence, right? So, I mean, just envision a scenario in which that could occur. Someone could be following all of the applicable policies that are in place. Someone could be completely honestly and openly communicating and being transparent, not only in the medical records but also with the family. All the things that you would think of that wouldn't be ethical in this sort of same fact pattern as the case that we've been studying could have occurred. So, I mean, you could act in total in a manner that's completely ethical, and yet as a provider, as a physician, as some sort of practitioner, you make some mistake, right? So, and by mistake, what I mean is you do something that's inconsistent or that's below the standard of care, right? So you've established a duty, you formed that relationship with the patient, which creates the duty, and then you've somehow breached the duty. So you've done something that deviates from the standard of care. And let's assume that there's causation, and assume that there are damages. So you've met all the 4 elements of potential liability in a negligence or medical malpractice case, yet you've acted completely ethically. So to me, that's the perfect way to sort of describe the distinction between ethical issues and legal issues. you meet all the elements of a legal liability negligence case, and act in a manner that's completely ethical. The way I would frame ethical issues are around the principles that we've discussed and that we've learned throughout the class. So things like autonomy, things like beneficence, non-malfeasance, the principles, the theories that we've discussed. That's how I would frame ethical issues. And feel free to utilize those principles in your analysis, and frame the issues, apply the facts through the lens of those various principles. So that's how I would view that, and that's hopefully that helps in terms of drawing that distinction between legal issues and ethical issues. Now, sometimes they can overlap, right? So someone can act unethically, and just that act of not being ethical could in and of itself be a deviation from the standard of care, right? And that's very possible, and I'm sure that happens quite often. There can certainly be an overlap, but there doesn't have to be, and so that's my point. Okay, so enough of that. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I want to talk a little bit about the discussion question this week. I think it's very important to this whole class, we're talking about healthcare, legal and ethical issues, and this discussion question really personifies that. It's if you haven't taken a look at it, it's the Brittany Maynard case. I believe it's out of Oregon. And take a look at the backstory and just everything that occurred before you answer that discussion question. But it's sort of this I guess what it forces us to think about is this conflict, or this potential conflict between our own personal beliefs and any sort of law or professional code of conduct that we're expected to follow. And so that's hopefully, as we think about the discussion question, it forces us to think about that and to personalize it. Like, how most of us in this class are licensed practitioners. Even if you're not, that's fine. I mean, think about, put yourself in that position of being asked to, or the code of conduct dictates that you do something that's inconsistent with your own personal values, or something that you don't necessarily believe in. And so the question I would pose is that a bad thing? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just it's a good question to really think about. Are we terrible people for compromising are we compromising our personal ethics if we're following a rule or some sort of code of conduct that's not consistent with our beliefs? The light in my office just went out, and hopefully that's not a problem. I guess I wasn't moving around enough. Yeah, hopefully that's enough lighting. Sorry. So let me put it in another context. So say a police officer can personally believe that a law that he or she is required to enforce is wrong, but under the code of conduct of the police force, he or she is required to obey all lawful and reasonable instructions to enforce that law, unless there's good and sufficient cause to do otherwise. So is that police officer not ethical, or somehow a hypocrite for following that code of conduct in spite of his or her ethical beliefs? This is a dangerous question to ask, but maybe you think or don't think highly of my profession as a lawyer, but there are good lawyers and bad lawyers. Think about it this way. Let's say I don't really do a lot of litigation. I do no criminal work, but let's say a lawyer, and it happens all the time, is asked to defend someone who did something super egregious, something that is against the law and obviously is against the personal ethics of that particular lawyer, but based on our legal profession's code of conduct, we're required to zealously advocate for our client in order to make sure that client receives the due process that he or she deserves as a citizen. And so it's an interesting question. How do we separate that? Do we separate it? I think it's all part and parcel of the discussion question this week, and some things to think about. So that's all I have. I just reminders. We are now in the process of submitting final drafts. I'll be grading the first draft of the Terry Schiavo case this week, and but as we think about the final assignments, especially this week for the Itraldi case, just keep in mind the feedback that I've provided to many of you, and some of the things that I think are really important. Number one is the analysis is really important to me. I am not as concerned, as I've noted before, about your conclusion. I'm concerned about the analysis. And so, follow that, the IRAC form of pattern of legal analysis that we've discussed. Define the issue. What is the rule? That's really important, is to state the rule. Even if it's obvious or we all know it, it's important to state that rule. And then analyze. Apply facts to the rule, specific facts, all the facts that will help you to support your conclusion, and then come to your conclusion. And that needs to be done for each element. So it's important to break out each element in the legal component. That's very important. So if you have any questions, let me know. One word of warning, and this seems to come up in every class, is that if you got an A or an A minus or a really good grade in the first draft that you submitted on this case, and this goes for the Terry Schiavo project as well, that will not guarantee you an A in the final assignment. So what I would caution you not to do, let's say you got an A, is just to paste the legal component and the malpractice and the ethical component together and submit it as the final draft. I would not do that for a couple of reasons. First reason is the rubric for the final version is a little bit different, and you'll see the rubric for this final draft is broken out into much more significant detail. And the requirements for this rubric may not be the same requirements as the first draft that you submitted. So please don't do that. If you do that, there's no guarantee that paper will come back with an A with the same grade that you had before. So I can't guarantee that. The second reason is that I am human, especially when it comes to grading, and there may have been something that I missed or didn't miss, or will miss or may not miss in this final version that you submit. And so if you got an A in the rough draft, you submit it, and there was something that I missed that I won't miss in the final draft, please just don't be surprised if the grade changes. So there's no guarantee that you'll get the same grade if you got an A or B or whatever. If you're fine with a B and you submit it, there's no guarantee that you'll get a B back. So I just please, the safest thing you can do is follow the feedback that I gave you, and to just respond, be very direct, respond to the requirements of each section in the rubric, because that's how I grade it. And you've noticed that many times I provide specific comments in the rubric itself, because that's what I'm looking for. Whatever's in the rubric is what I'm looking for. And so if you can directly respond to whatever's in the rubric, that's the safest bet, regardless of what your grade was for the initial draft. So I am around all week. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. My contact information is out there, so just please let me know. Have a great week and good luck on everything. Thanks.